Council of PTAs, Marcus Brown. I do not believe is here. All right, so we do have a quorum. And so now, the second item on the agenda is to approve the November minutes. Do you all have those? Those were sent, correct? Yeah. So do you need a minute to review the November minutes, or if not, I can have a motion, someone can do a motion to approve. Okay. Okay, so.
Someone needs to make a motion, or?
If everyone needs a minute, then just be silent and read for a minute. Otherwise, I need someone to make a motion to approve the November minutes.
I'm
Yeah.
taking a minute to find it.
Can I have a second? Or, that was Deborah?
Yep.
Okay.
If you don't mind, it may have gone to Dr. Scott. Would you mind sending me the November minutes? I have January, but I don't have November.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? No, then all in favor? Say aye or raise your hand. Okay, opposed? All right, minutes passed. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is to just review our approved subcommittee goal, just to inform our discussion for the rest of the meeting. And the goal that we agreed on was to present school district leadership with strategies to ensure that students have teachers with the skills to address their students' academic and emotional needs at hard-to-staff schools. The recommendations will include the obstacles along with the corresponding recommended solutions. So just a little reminder. So then this meeting is going to be all about looking at the data that was supplied by Mr. Oswald, which is the school survey results, as well as the school demographics that go along with the school survey results, and then the data on financial incentives to teach at certain places, such as high-achieving schools or hard-to-staff schools like in the Glades, et cetera. So everybody should have all of that data. The supplements that teachers get to the financial incentives was sent out. That's like a file, basically a file that lists everything. And then the school survey results and the school demographics were links with that's at the last meeting. We went over that a little bit just on how to navigate those websites and such. So what I would suggest that to begin the discussion, that everybody on their own computer bring up those the school survey website as well as the financial incentives file. And so let me just start. Does anybody need, you should all have the emails with the links, but does anybody need that link, the link to the school survey? Here we go. Deborah Robinson asked to put the links in the chat. Are you able? Okay, I still have your emails. Let me pull those up because I need the links myself.
Let me find it.
And in addition to those links, does everybody have the the teacher supplements file? Ms. Hicks sent that out on January 23rd. So let me say this, does anybody not have that file? If not, then we can email that out again.
That's the spreadsheet, right?
That's the spreadsheet, yes,
I
exactly.
have the spreadsheet. I just don't have the link, the dashboard link.
Okay.
Which document are we you're looking for?
It's, you had provided, Keith, you had sent on January 21st an email to, I think, actually to me and CC'd Ms. Hicks with the school survey dashboard and the enrollment dashboard. I have that email right here in front of me. If, is the easiest thing, Ms. Hicks, for me to forward that to you and then you could send it out to the committee?
I can put it in the chat here as soon as I find it myself. So is that your Gold Coast Down Syndrome email?
Yeah, sue@goldcoastdownsyndrome.org, yeah.
All right, okay, fine.
Yeah, you sent it on January 22nd.
Got it. So which one do you want in there?
The two links, the one to the school survey dashboard and the other to the enrollment dashboard. Okay, Ms. Hicks has it.
One is in there. Okay, you should have everything in the chat.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Chair Davis, Killian, you got a hand raised?
What, I'm sorry, what?
You have a hand raised, Dr. Robinson?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
hey, thanks. So I'm not exactly sure what we're about to do, but if we're about to, quote, play with these Power BIs, we probably should show them on the screen. So that we're all, because otherwise you're gonna say, click on this. I mean, we might not be looking at the same thing, but I'm not sure where we're going with this.
No, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Okay, so let me just talk a little bit about the three things we have here and why we had requested this data. So the school effectiveness survey is that, we thought as a committee that we might be able to see, based on the answers, I think particularly teacher and student answers, which which schools were maybe more supportive of teachers, which schools were meeting students' needs a little better. It's, this is all kind of the little gray, wishy-washy area of how we really determine, as we discussed at length, teacher effectiveness and all that. So that's the one link. The other link, the school demographics, was provided so that I think as we look at the school effectiveness survey results and look at different schools, then we can look at the actual demographics of the school. I mean, I think for a lot of the schools, we all have a vague understanding of what the demographics look like, but that other link, the demographic data, is just if we really want to look up in more detail, how many free and reduced lunch, that kind of thing. I suggest we start with the simpler one, which is the teacher supplement spreadsheet, because it's a little more straightforward. I feel like we could probably spend weeks looking at the school effectiveness survey and really drilling down, and we may decide to do that, or we may decide that there's a better way to approach it. Cassandra, you raised a hand?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I am recalling correctly that the part of what we want to ascertain is which teachers, where there are teachers who are most effective in the district. Like, we're looking for the most effective teachers, where they are in the district. And then let me just confirm if that's if that's one data point that we're trying to isolate.
I'd say that, and also the flip of if there's less effective teachers as well.
Right, and there's.
No, I think it was, my understanding was about attracting and retaining highly qualified teachers in our neediest schools.
No.
Go ahead, Dr. Robinson.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was gonna raise my hand. So I think highly effective triggered me. Because that's like bureaucratic language that doesn't mean enough in terms of what we're talking about, right? And so, at least for me, I think that what Dr. Cassandra said was right in terms of what I was thinking we're trying to do. But then the next thing is, why aren't they where they're most needed? What are the institutional and non-institutional barriers for having the best, however that gets defined, the best teachers with the kids that need them most? That's where my brain was. Yeah.
Correct. That's exactly, that's the conversation I recall several months ago.
And we had a whole long discussion about that. What's actually realistic? I've talked about this issue decade after decade since I've been a principal. And so what's realistic to get the most highly qualified? And we talked about, what are those barriers? And finances is one. That's why we talked about the supplements.
Keith, can I interject just 1 second?
Yep.
I don't think it's, you just said something and I think what you just said was, how do we get them? And I think what we're looking at, where there are currently highly effective teachers. Not how do we get them, like via supplements and things like that. So I think some of this data was to help us isolate where there may be highly effective teachers. I'm just using that language. teachers right now in schools?
Well, I just was, one of the data points we didn't pull were like teachers who were considered highly effective, because that was never part of a request or part of any conversations that I recall. So
I think
we
also.
don't have that data point.
Right. I guess, yeah, that would be interesting, Keith. And also, what criteria makes a teacher considered highly effective? Because kind of like Dr. Robinson said, it's, I always look at it as how much is a highly effective teacher and how much is a teacher who's teaching in a highly effective student body, right?
Yeah.
So I think it was one of the reasons why we wanted to pull the school effectiveness survey data, because we thought we might get a little insight into that, especially the questions to the students about, is there a trusted adult that they can speak to and things like that. I think we all know intuitively that, it's easier to teach at a upper and middle income school where every student has a private teacher, and then all your students do well and you're considered highly effective. So, and really back to what Dr. Robinson said is, how do we get the truly highly effective, not bureaucratically highly effective teachers into the schools that really need them? And so, I think a good place to start would be with the supplement. 'Cause I found it very eye-opening when I looked at that. It kind of shows the priorities on spending. But it's certainly, the supplements are certainly not the only issue. Dr. Robinson?
Thanks. So I'm gonna follow the lead of the group, but I just need to insert that two things. One is, unless the supplements are different by schools, right? Like if the football coach at a lower income school gets less money than the football coach at a higher income school, like I wasn't clear why we were looking at the supplements, but I'll ride with it, right? But the other thing is, I do think that we need to figure out how we are measuring these teachers that we are hoping to inspire, incentivize, or whatever, to work with the groups that we also need to define the group, because otherwise, to me, it's too vague. And then the last thing I say is, we did do this thing decades ago that I called them the $10,000 teachers, where they actually pulled the data and pulled the teachers who created more than a year's gain academically in a year for students who have been underperforming. And I don't really remember right now exactly the criteria for the students. Like, I don't know if they were like level 1 or free or reduced lunch. I don't remember what the definition was for the students, but I do remember it was more than a year's growth in a year. And then gave them a $10,000 bonus to go to a school that had been F-rated, because I think we had 5 F-rated schools. And it was not a success. Very few teachers went. And the lesson that I learned from it was, we put new principals in those schools, and the teachers were not going to follow an unknown. Right? So I think if we're going to talk about, we probably need to get input from the educators about what makes a teacher want to go where they go, right? And to help us guide this conversation. I don't personally think supplements have anything to do with it, but I could be completely wrong. And I'll mute myself. Thank you.
I'd say, could everybody please mute when they're not speaking, just to cut out the background noise? So that's a really, really good point, Dr. Robinson, and actually really interesting, because that, 10,000 is enough to really make a difference, right? So was that, Deborah, do you recall, was that a 10,000 bonus or a 10,000 raise. So it wasn't like an ad, it was a one-time thing. Do you remember?
I think, yeah, it was a
I
raise,
was a
right?
principal. So, and I had that, it didn't work. It was a one-time, nobody wanted to come to my school. I had one teacher that qualified for it. It caused culture issues on my campus. I'm just telling you my experience. So that's why it never went forward. Teachers didn't want to leave their school even for $10,000. And a good number of those teachers were already in the schools that would have received them. And as far as the why the supplements went on there, because we discussed at length about what financial benefits are there to work at certain schools or would they receive. The biggest thing I would tell you, when AP, IB, ACE industry certifications changed, where there was no longer a cap, so teachers get $50 for every pass. That has a significant issue at the high school level for a teacher's pocketbook. So if I got an 80% pass rate, I've got 5 classes of any of those, and I'm carrying a load of 125 kids. I get 100 kids who pass that times $50. You know, you can do the math.
But can you, Keith? Just joking.
$5,000.
Yeah, so that's kind of why we.
One of the things we pulled.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we asked for the supplements, assuming, which, you know what happens when you assume, that one of the reasons that teachers don't want to go into the lower performing or hard to staff schools is because the finances, that you know, again, just like Keith said, they're not, that 5,000, if you're doing ACE and AP and all that, that is, you know, that's every year. That's additional. So that's why we asked for the supplements, but I find it very interesting to hear the results of the program that you had a while back with the $10,000 bonus, because that I think is indicative of it's not just money, right? And what else is involved? And how do we figure out what else is involved? Yeah.
So I know Mr. Oswald said that he couldn't get teachers to come to his school. I will say that my husband did leave a school to go and receive the bonus. We were a young family. It helped us out. But when the money was gone, he left because it was the money that drove him to stay there. And so how do we, even if we offer that, because we're also in a different economic situation right now, if we were to offer that type of stipend, and it probably couldn't be 10,000 because that was 17 years ago that my family took advantage of that, because I remember my daughter being a newborn, and she's 17 and graduating this year, class of 2025. So and that's because Mr. Oswald is old. So I just, the economic situation now for teachers is so much different, and how do we sustain a stipend for them? Because what happens is you have that stipend in place, and I remember my husband left Liberty Park Elementary School to go teach algebra at John F. Kennedy Middle School. And so how do you sustain that once the stipend is gone? Right? Because your pay changes. You get used to a certain amount of money, and then your pay changes. And so, and they basically say at the end of June 30th, your next paycheck in July is going to not have whatever that amount of money is. So how do you sustain that? So we have to look for something that is not, that is economically sustainable for the district to get the quote unquote highly effective or the teach and people that want to be there.
Right. I think that's a really good point, and part of why we looked at one of the list on the supplements, because those are sustainable. Those are things that are year after year.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It was after a certain amount of years, they basically gave them a letter and said they were not going to continue it. So.
Interesting.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry, I wasn't talking into the microphone. So how do we make it a stipend that's sustainable for the district economically?
Right.
Where's the money gonna come from? I guess that's the question I'm asking.
Yeah. And we're all quiet because nobody has an answer.
Chief, you're talking, but you have to unmute. I can't hear you.
No, I think we're ahead of, I don't think we were looking at strategies at this point. I think we were still trying to study. I guess I'm still trying to clarify the intent or what we're trying to do. My comments, and then I'll shut up because I don't want, I'm just saying, I want us to be realistic. We're going to look to bring recommendations forward to the board or to the superintendent. What's realistic to actually work? Because I've seen this for so long that we talk about this issue, and it frustrates me to no end because I don't know what the right answer is, because clearly everything that was tried before for me, and I worked at, hard to staff schools, and I would complain to the district on deaf ears and nothing would ever change. So, and what would realistically change between the constraints of teacher contracts and just realistic, to be realistic about it.
Right. So I think.
That's what Thaddeus says.
Cassandra, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. So previously, we put forth some recommendations to the board. One of those recommendations was around effective teachers. I don't remember the exact language. It might behoove us to find that language and bring that language back. Because I think before we started this ad hoc committee, I did say, let's not forget about the recommendations that we did bring forward. And again, one of the board members highlighted, I don't remember what the number was, but one of the recommendations that we put forth. So that language might help guide what it is we're trying to get at with this data and for this committee. So that might be helpful, because I do remember we put forth a lot of energy and effort into the previous committee, and those recommendations were very solid. And so I don't want to go through another exercise of bringing some recommendations that nobody does anything with.
So do we have a way to find those recommendations and take a look at that? Because you're right, we don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, I'm looking to pull it up.
Okay. So, I'd say, obviously we're in this phase of this where we're figuring out obstacles before we're finding solutions, right? And so kind of back to the supplement thing, that, we requested that data, I think, on the assumption that one of the obstacles is financial. But I think and so we can probably, the financial incentives is something that, that's data. We can look at not only the supplement sheet, but also things like how teacher ratings and all that are done and figure out the financial stuff. But then which we definitely should do, but then my question would be, how do we determine what those other less easy to track obstacles are that you all have been speaking about? The unknown principal, the not wanting to leave your school, whatever. Those are much harder to figure out, I think.
And that's why we put the SEQ data in there, because culture, the research is there about the culture retains teachers. And that's why I worked really hard to support and retain teachers through culture. I tell you, if I'm speaking to any municipality, I always, we see what the village of Wellington, what they do for the Wellington schools. One, they're giving a huge financial support to the school. But they do a lot of recognition. Royal Palm does. So I always when I talk to certain municipalities, I talk to them, how are you engaging with your schools within your municipality to recognize and support? Is it working with your local businesses to provide discounts for teachers? Is it like coming in and doing a breakfast a couple times a year? Little things that build culture for teachers to feel appreciated and supported got me a lot further, at least, versus trying to give, $5,000, $10,000. If people feel they're cared for, supported, at a school. I said I was going to shut up. I'm sorry. This topic is really near and dear to me. So.
I don't think we want you to shut up, Keith, because you have a lot of experience in this. And, as a non-school person, I kind of feel like my job is to keep us on track and take notes and let you all who know a lot more about it do the talking. So I'm very interested in the topic, but I don't have anywhere near the knowledge that some of the others have on this. So that's really interesting, Keith, about what the municipalities do. That's something that never would have even occurred to me. So I think that's the kind of things that we're looking for. That again, that like you said, the SEQ data can give us some information about the culture.
Yeah, and when I worked at a non-title, like when I worked at Coral Reef, and I'm sorry, Ginny, or Manatee, like the PTA, the stuff that the PTA would do for teachers and to make people feel appreciated, little things that we're like, dang, this is like, but it meant a lot to the staff. It just saw a difference, or Verdi when I was in Boca. So just seeing both sides of it, how the community recognizes, plays into it as well, and supports that local school.
Yeah, no,
Elevate
that's
the profession and make them feel important, that you're part of the community.
right.
We want you here.
Yeah. So then the question is, how do we? I think you just listed two really big things: the support from the municipality and the community, and the PTA, which we all know, obviously, a PTA at a Title I school almost always looks very different from the PTA at the school in the more affluent areas. So, did someone just raise their hand? Janine has raised her hand.
Janina's in the room there with you guys.
So I just want to piggyback on what Mr. Oswald said. He talked about the culture. So, like I said, they gave my husband the money, but the culture didn't change. So when the money was gone, he was gone because the culture didn't change, because it doesn't really matter how much money you really give a person, they have to want to be in that situation. So vesting in the staff and the teachers that are there goes a long way. And really, I talk to Mr. Oswald about this all the time. We got to make sure that we have the right people in these schools, right? Leadership down, right? Because I believe that if you have the right leadership in a school, the right people to drive your staff, then it changes the way people operate in a school setting. It just changed. It's remarkable to walk the hallways of a school where the culture is positive, right? No matter what, no matter where the kids come from, the background they come from, if the culture is positive, and when we look at students that are not behaving in a certain way, and we speak to them with love, right? We give them, we speak to them with love. We operate in love, even when we have to suspend them, even when we have to discipline them. It's just a whole different situation and mindset, and that comes from the top. It trickles down. So I'm sorry, I'm real passionate about that part because I sometimes I don't think that we put the right people where they need to be. And so I think that not only are we looking for highly effective teachers, but yeah, you know what else we're looking for. I don't know if I should say that, but we're also looking for. Thank you, Taisha.
The leadership is, you said the leadership as well? Well, absolutely. I mean, I guess I considered that kind of a given, I know that this is how to get the correct teachers, but obviously a big part of that is having the right leadership to attract and retain those right teachers.
Right, the retention of it all, right?
And I agree with everything Ms. Simmons said, but I just want to put up Dr. Thaddeus, what we came up there. Was it this last one you were speaking to?
I think it was that one. Yes.
Is there any way to make that big enough for my old eyes to read? Or to send it, or to? Okay,
Yeah, it was
great.
definitely that one.
Thank you.
Can you, so that last one, Keith, was there another one about teacher? That might have been the one. I just want to see if there was anything else. Keep going up. Keep going. Yeah, that was another one. But the one that was called out at the board meeting, I think, was that last one.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember which board member.
This one kind of plays into what we were just talking about too.
Right, the culture piece.
Community partnership.
We spent some time talking about culture and belonging a lot in that.
Yeah.
In that committee. So that last bullet might be the one that I'm referring to. I'm pretty good. Yep.
Because it plays in.
So your data.
Teachers just as much as kids, right? They're not.
Absolutely. So your data, where it was, where I don't remember which one, but I know that you shared data the last time that where we were able to see students' voices that suggested they felt safe or they had a trusted adult, wherever that data is. I think that
Right. And
support some of this is a
yeah,
part
that's
of
the data that's in the school effectiveness survey. That's the questions that were asked of the students.
Yeah.
So you see, this is all schools. If I were to look at just Title I, for example, you can see there's little less. There are some differences. There's less blue. But I think that if you wanted to go by let's just go for high school. So if we look at high school, Title I, this is what your picture looks like. So students feel like they belong at their school. Let's look, I'm satisfied as a teacher being at this school. It's about 90%. So if I look at non-title, it jumps up some. But you can see that title has, you know, some more writing there. If I go to middle school, I'm at the title, I mean, middle school non-title. Doesn't look great. Middle school title. So committed, impactful employees, this section up here, I think is important when we're looking at teacher retention. Non-title, you can see there's a lot more blue, higher ratings versus title around teacher piece and culture, the culture piece. And then if I go elementary, all right, this is elementary title. It's actually not too bad. I go non-title, but it's still more blue. And again, this is in the chat. Dr. Robinson, I think.
Yeah, thank you. So I think what's remarkable to me is when there's a difference between the student's view and the view of the staff, especially the staff, right?
Yeah.
So like the students respect each other at the school. Now, I can't really see what's in the red, but okay, it's 50-something%, and then 80-something% of the staff say yes, right? So that's huge.
Yeah, we've done a lot with principals on that, the perception issues.
Well, okay, but perception is reality. So I think that's
Exactly. That's what we
I mean,
about.
okay. So, but okay, the other thing. So this whole conversation is driving me nuts because y'all know I want to do a flow chart, right? I just can't. I can't take it. I can't take that. Like, but so I'm gonna just say this in my little head, the way I process information. I think we try to figure out how we define, I'm going to call them high impact teachers. How about that? How we define high impact teachers. I think it does start with going back to the work of Dr. Cassandra and what was distilled out of her work, right? But then the question is, and that's part of it. We start there. But what I have problems with, and this is where the hard part's going to come, is how do we find them? Like, how will we go into, how will we ask the data people to find these teachers? Like, so when you develop it, you develop what?
This stuff that Dr. Thaddeus is talking about, you can help. I had a land of misfits in the schools I ran, and we created a really high performing school. So you can train people up, you can get people to care.
But that's not what I'm saying. Wait a minute, hang on. That's another thing, right? So that's another thing. So the number 2 is how do you train them up where they are? How do you grow them where they've been planted, so to speak, right? Yes. But what we were talking about earlier, I think, what I was talking about was how do you find those who are high impact and get them where they're most needed, whether it's inside their school, right? Inside their existing school or move to another school. That's what my head was. So see, I'm gonna write out my questions so I could be clearer next time, because I need to approach this in a way that seems sequential. At least to me, it might not seem sequential to anybody else, right? But the question is, how do you know? So we could each give our stories about high impact teachers, right? But how, as a district, how can the district find them? That's why I mentioned the thing with the $10,000 teachers, because they use student data to identify those teachers. That was not at all perfect, right? But for example, the SEQ, can you sort the SEQ by teacher? Like, can you find the teachers in the Title I schools that have like the kids who had the most green ratings, for example? I mean, I'm just saying there has to be a way to find them, because I think ultimately in the real world, we would have a conversation with those teachers, right? So anyway, so I'm done, but I'm gonna outline it. I'm gonna do my own flow chart, and I'll share next time.
No, okay, so that's great, actually, because I think that's what we're going to need, because we clearly are not, when we have a meeting with, at best 45 minutes of real work time, we're not going to be going through these charts of data and all that kind of stuff. It's going to need a little bit of exploration offline. So we have 5 minutes before the next meeting starts. So I think what I'd like to focus on is, it's very hard as we're talking to not leach over into solutions, like, how do we find the teachers, for example, or whatever. But I think also back to, we really need to identify very much like Dr. Robinson said, of how do we really identify those, what'd you say? I liked your term, highly, not effective, highly.
I call them high impact.
High impact
we
teachers.
could
I
come
like
up with
that. I
another
like that term. But also what, going back to the obstacles, why are the high impact teachers not in those schools now? And I think we've identified some of the obstacles about the culture and things like that. So I think going forward, we should like everyone to, like really kind of play with the school effectiveness data, and just on your own, kind of go down that little rabbit hole of looking at everything that you can see, and come back and we'll discuss what we think obstacles are, but also do we need other things, other ways to find out what the other obstacles are? Is, Cassandra,
hear
we
you.
can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Now we can.
That's better.
I just want to make a quick comment. And because I want to caution us not to make assumptions that all quote unquote highly effective, however they're defined, schools by the grade or whatever, are actually have a great culture for all students.
Yeah,
I want to be
definitely
careful
true.
about. And the opposite also may not be true, which is a Title I school that's not deemed effective don't have some really great teachers in those schools. So I want to make sure we're not speaking in absolutes as we move forward. So I just wanted to say that.
Right, no, absolutely, absolutely.
If I may, I mean, I think both points are very important, right? Like, instead of looking at the whole school, we need to be looking at teachers individually, and what data point are we looking at? What system are we using to identify these highly effective teachers, right? Because that's step one. Before we could figure out what schools they're being assigned to or why they're being assigned to specific schools, we need to know, who are they, right? How many are they in a specific school, so that then we could go into part two of this. I think it's kind of, we need to decipher a step system on how we're going to attack this problem or
Right,
do this.
I think you're right, and Mr. Oswald, I think it would be helpful maybe to send to the committee information on how teacher ratings are done, what criteria determines a quote highly effective teacher, and also then any finances that's tied to those ratings. Does that, I don't know enough about the teacher contract or anything to know, is the percent raised based on their rating and all that? And are the ratings basically just based on how well the students do, or are there other things? So I think that data would be really interesting before our next meeting.
Yeah, I can get you the categories.
Okay, so Keith said he would send that, and it is 10 o'clock, so I hate to just
Can you get that from?
abruptly end us, but I think I have to abruptly end us. So we'll have, so Ms. Hicks will send out the information from Keith, and then we'll go from there. See you next month.